6:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Romesh Piris and read by Soundithavam. India willing to invest in new fields contributing to the Sri Lankan economy. Bilateral talks to reopen the country to tourists. COVID-19 recoveries exceed 17,000. The isolation status in several police areas in the western province to be lifted from tomorrow. Schools in the Dambulla education zone closed for a week. In international news, Iran's top nuclear scientist stayed in the shadows but his work was uncovered. And in sports, Andre Russell's individual brilliance helped the Colombo Kings defeat the Galle Gladiators in a 5-over shootout. The National Security Advisor of India, Ajit Doval, called on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the Presidential Secretariat late yesterday. According to the President's media division, President Rajapaksa and the Indian Security Advisor engaged in a highly fruitful discussion aimed at further strengthening all forms of bilateral relations. Indo-Lanka security cooperation, maintaining peace and security in the Indian Ocean region, and infrastructure development in Sri Lanka were among the major topics discussed. Both sides have agreed that the infrastructure development projects initiated with the assistance of India should be completed expeditiously. Doval expressed India's willingness to identify and invest in new fields that can contribute to the economic growth in Sri Lanka. The number of COVID-19 recoveries recorded in the country has surpassed 17,000. The epidemiology unit of the Ministry of Health said 346 COVID-19 patients who recovered were discharged during the past 24 hours, increasing recoveries to 17,002. Meanwhile, the number of coronavirus cases confirmed in Sri Lanka rose to 22,988, following the detection of 487 patients yesterday. 5,877 COVID-19 patients are currently receiving treatment at 56 hospitals across the country. 498 individuals suspected to have contracted the virus are under medical observation. COVID-19 related deaths stands at 109 thus far. The Army Commander, Lieutenant General Shavendra Silva, says the isolation status in Petta, Foreshore and the Mattakulia police areas in the Colombo district and Nigambo and Ragama police areas in the Gampaha district will be lifted at 5 a.m. tomorrow. He said the isolation status will continue in Modara, Blumendal, Kotahena, Grand Pass, Dam Street, Adiripu Street, Maligavatta, Dematagoda, Keselvatta police areas and the Vakanda and Vanathamulla Grama Niladari divisions. The Army Commander said the Randia Uyana housing scheme and south of Ferguson Road in the Mattakulia police area and Laksanda Sevana housing scheme, Salmal Grama Niladari division and the Vijayapura Grama Niladari division in the Vellampitiya police area will be declared as new isolated areas from 5 a.m. tomorrow. He added that the isolation status will continue in Kalaniya, Battala and the Paliagoda police areas in the Gampaha district. The Mayor of Dambulla, Jalia Opatha, says that all schools in the Dambulla education zone will be closed for a period of 1 week from tomorrow. This decision was taken considering the possibility that the children of COVID-19 infected patients could attend schools. Meanwhile, the Galkiriyagama school was recently closed as a farmer in the Galkiriyagama area in Galevala was diagnosed with the coronavirus. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The Sri Lanka Customs has decided to re-export 11,000 tons of turmeric imported to Sri Lanka despite restrictions imposed by the government. Accordingly, the Additional Director General and media spokesman of the Customs, Sunil Jayaratne, said 62 containers containing the goods will be exported to India. He noted the stock was imported on credit and, as requested by the Indian supplier, would be re-exported. Jayaratne said 10 tons of this stock was given to the Sri Lanka Ayurvedic Drugs Corporation on a request by them to the Customs. The Il Mahaperahera Mangalya of the Ruhunu Katragama Mahadevalaya will begin today to invoke blessings on the devotees and the people. The festival is considered the second important event in the calendar of the historic Ruhunu Mahakatragama Devalaya. The festival has been held since the era of King Dutugamanu, who united the country after defeating invaders. The Parahara is held annually in keeping with the centuries-old traditions and rituals associated with the historic Ruhunu Mahakatragama Devalaya. Historic Katragama is famous since the time of the third visit of the Buddha to the country in the 6th century and meditated at the place to sanctify it. Kirivehera in Katragama is one of the 16 places of worship where the Buddha visited. Buddhists also pay reverence to the historic Ruhunu Mahakatragama Devalaya. All communities in the country, including the members of the Adivasi community, will participate in the festival. That's local news.
A mother knows the pain of each member of the family. Siddhalepa, the trusted relief for aches and pains.
An effective therapy for relief from cold, sneezing, flu, headaches, swelling due to toothaches, rheumatic, discomforts, and muscular aches and pains. Siddhalepa, the Veda Mahatmya in every home.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Veda Mahatmya.
Bilateral talks are due to be held between officials in the health and tourism sectors to discuss the reopening of the country to tourists. The Minister of Tourism, Prasanna Ranatunga, said he hopes to hold talks within the next week. The government directed attention towards bringing down tourists as groups after containing the first COVID-19 wave in the country. Accordingly, the Cabinet of Ministers granted approval to a joint cabinet paper tabled by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and Tourism Minister to allow 44,000 tourists from the Russian Federation to arrive in the island. Additionally, plans are underway to allow groups of tourists from several other countries, including Germany and Australia, to enter the country. That was the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Veda Mahatmya. Brush your teeth twice a day for healthy teeth and gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, your trusted brands in oral care for many years.
Supiriviki Ayurvedic toothpaste for adults. Kakulu Ayurvedic toothpaste for kids. 9 Ayurvedic ingredients of Supiriviki will protect your teeth and strengthen your gums. Supiriviki and Kakulu, products from Siddhalepa.
Moving on to Watchlight, the Sri Lanka Public Health Inspectors Union has warned of environmental pollution if the public do not responsibly and correctly dispose of used face masks. Union Chairman Upul Rohana stressed that face masks were thrown on roads and pavements, giving rise to environmental pollution. He also called for an efficient disposal program to be introduced, as burning trash is not sustainable. That came to in Watchlight. Moving on to a bulletin of world news in the headlines. Iran's top nuclear scientist stayed in the shadows, but his work was uncovered. Japan marks 130 years since the opening of parliament. And LA shuts down restaurants as infection spreads. Iranian scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh was killed on Friday, led a life of such secrecy that even his age was under wraps, but much about the clandestine nuclear weapons program he is believed to have run has long been known. The UN International Atomic Energy Agency said it suspected that Fakhrizadeh oversaw secret work to fit a warhead on a ballistic missile, test high explosives suitable for a nuclear weapon, and process uranium. Iran insists it never had such a program nor any ambition to make a bomb. The IAEA and the US intelligence agencies believe it had a coordinated weapons program that it halted in 2003. Japanese lawmakers have celebrated the 130th anniversary of the opening of the country's parliament. The beginning of Japan's parliamentary system dates back to 1890, when members of the Imperial Diet gathered for the first time. Today's celebration at the Upper House Plenary Hall was attended by Emperor Naruhito, Empress Masako, and Princess Mako, the eldest daughter of Crown Prince Akishino. The emperor said the Diet, as the highest organ of state power, has become increasingly important as it works to carry out its duty to achieve national prosperity and world peace. Restaurants in Los Angeles County in California have been banned from serving customers as the coronavirus continues to spread throughout the state. Figures from Johns Hopkins University show that the United States is averaging more than 100,000 new daily cases. The Los Angeles County banned all on-site outdoor dining for 3 weeks last Wednesday. Indoor dining was already prohibited. Back to the headlines of the world news. Iran's top nuclear scientist stayed in the shadows, but his work was uncovered. Japan marks 130 years since opening of parliament. And LA shuts down restaurants as infection spreads. That concludes this bulletin of world news. On to development news. The Asian Development Bank and the government of Sri Lanka signed a $165 million loan agreement to provide immediate financing support for small and medium-sized enterprises which have been severely affected by the coronavirus disease pandemic, and long-term financing to underserved SMEs, including businesses led by women and tea smallholders. The Secretary, Ministry of Finance, S.R. Rajigala, signed the loan agreement for the government of Sri Lanka, and ADB Sri Lanka Resident Mission Country Director Chen Shen signed on behalf of the ADB. That's development news, and moving on to sports. Andre Russell's individual brilliance helped the Colombo Kings defeat the Galle Gladiators by 34 runs in a 5-over shootout in the 4th 2020 Lanka Premier League tournament game in Hambantota. 3 hours of rain over the Hambantota skies resulted in the 2020 game reduced to a 5-over-a-side match. The Galle Gladiators skipper Shahid Afridi won the all-important toss and put the Kings into bat. The West Indian powerhouse, Russell, opened the batting for the Kings and made his intention clear from the outset. The win helps the Kings top the LPL points table with 4 points, while the winless Galle is languishing at the bottom of the table. The LPL games will resume tomorrow, with 2 games scheduled in Hambantota at 3:30 p.m. and 8 p.m. between the Dambulla Vikings versus the Jaffna Stallions and the Galle Gladiators versus the Kandy Tuskers. Meanwhile, in the second ODI day-night encounter in Sydney between Australia and India, Australia won by 51 runs. Earlier, India were 338 for 9 wickets. Skipper Kohli made 89 and KL Rahul 76 runs. In reply, Australia reached the target, losing 4 wickets. Captain Stephen Smith made 104, which included 2 sixers and 14 boundaries, and David Warner made 83, which included 7 boundaries and 3 sixers. That's sports news, and we move on to business news. Recording a year of commanding financial performance in a challenging economic backdrop, Navaloka Hospitals PLC, a pioneering force in the private healthcare sector, posted a revenue of 8.5 billion rupees for the fiscal year 2019-2020. While performance in the first quarter of the year was severely hindered due to the devastating Easter attacks, progress during the final quarter was impacted by the developing global health crisis. Navaloka Hospital's remarkable improvement in performance is largely credited to cost-saving measures that were aggressively driven across the organisation. That's business news. We look at economic news next.
Economic news, courtesy of...
Hello, Puta. Did you land already?
We're in transit and our flight got delayed.
How is Shani? Poor thing with her pregnancy.
Calm down, everything is sorted. Why, I have my LOLC World Card with me. We are at the VIP lounge.
LOLC Finance Credit Cards. Fuel the goodness in you.
The World Bank's new country director for the Maldives, Nepal and Sri Lanka, Faris Hadadzevov, completed his first visit to Sri Lanka recently. The purpose of this visit was to meet key policymakers and understand the country's development priorities. The visit included the port and other facilities in the Hambantota district to observe infrastructure development in the south. The current World Bank portfolio in Sri Lanka consists of 19 ongoing projects with a total commitment value of $3.65 billion in a variety of sectors, including transport, urban, agriculture, water, education and health. And that's economic news.
Congratulations on your promotion. When will be our treat, huh?
How about today?
Oh no, I was just joking.
It's fine. I have my LOLC credit card with me. Let's go out today.
Introducing LOLC Finance Credit Cards. Fuel the goodness in you.
The weather report to conclude, the Meteorological Department says the low-pressure area in the southeast Bay of Bengal is likely to intensify into a depression during the next 24 hours, and it is possible to intensify further. This system is likely to move nearly westwards to the north coast of Sri Lanka. It will affect the weather over the island and the surrounding sea areas during the next few days. Several spells of showers will occur in the northern and eastern provinces and in the Polonnaruwa district. Showers and thundershowers will occur at a few places in the western, central and Sabragamo provinces and in the Galle and Matara districts in the evening. Fairly heavy falls, about 50 millimetres, are likely at some places. To conclude this bulletin of news, a recap of the headlines. India willing to invest in new fields contributing to the Sri Lankan economy. Bilateral talks to reopen the country to tourists. COVID-19 recoveries exceed 17,000. The isolation status in several police areas in the western province to be lifted from tomorrow. Schools in the Dambul education zone closed for a week. Iran's top nuclear scientist stayed in the shadows, but his work was uncovered. Andre Russell's individual brilliance helped the Colombo Kings defeat the Gold Gladiators in a 5-over shootout.